Welcome to another video. In this video I'm going to show you how I designed and created my own 3D printed wall art. I found Herschel Shapiro's channel months ago before I even knew that I wanted to create wall art. But I remembered his content and this gave me the basic inspiration to start creating my own. I'll link his channel somewhere on screen and in the description, so definitely check him out for more amazing wall art. And the main goal is to fill an empty piece of wall that we have here in our hallway. When doing some research about how I could create a 3D design, I also came across the website Paragami that sells 3D origami plans and 3D models. They only showed renders, not really created or printed products, so this was not really convincing me to try or buy somebody else's design. And why would I pay 10 or 20 euros if you can spend hours messing with Blender to learn how to do it myself? So that's exactly what I did. I started up Blender and started designing. And after 5 or 6 hours of designing and starting over a couple of times, I had something that I liked. Something with geometric shapes and that also conveyed some sort of energy, motion and depth. It already looked great in 3D. Unfortunately, at that time, I didn't even plan on making a video, so I don't have the Blender design part included here. But my basic setup is to fill an empty wall that we have here. And it was to create a wall art that was about 60 to 80 centimeters or 23.6 by 31.5 inches. I divided this by an uneven grid, so I had a single center square piece. Well, let's just say there's a single piece in the center of the grid, and this should give a nice focal point in the end. I ended up with a grid that became 15 by 21 squares of 4 centimeters per square. And I also looked for a grid that I could divide in larger pieces that would fit on my print bed of the BambuLab P1S printer that I use. So the 15 by 21 grid I ended on was perfect because I could divide this into larger 3 by 3 pieces, which would bring 300 individual pieces back to only 35 printable pieces. This will make managing and mounting the piece a lot easier, so that's what I went with. For my first wall art project, I also decided to stay with one color, because multicolor needs a finer grid or a lot more individual pieces, and it brings a lot more complexity with managing and mounting every single piece. And I also did some test prints to find out the settings that I wanted, the wall thickness, bottom layers, because one layer extra is a difference of 300 grams that you need to hang on the wall. So I optimized that, and I optimized the print layout, which you can see on the screen now. 3 batches, 3 reels of filament. Ended up with about over 3 days of print time and 2.6 kilograms of filament. And I went with the metal PLA from BambuLab, the copper color. And I went with this color because I thought it would really accentuate the design. It has a nice sheen to it. It's not matte, it's not the normal PLA, but it's just different, and the copper color gives a nice color variance, so to say, from every single light source. And every different angle, it has a different sheen. So I really like that for this project. And as for printing, this is the biggest print project I've done so far, especially designing it myself. So it's quite, I wouldn't say stressful, but you don't know if it will work out, and 3 rolls of filament is an investment, but in the end I only had about 2 pieces that I reprinted that didn't have a nice finish on one of the squares or angles, the sides of the pieces. So out of the 9 pieces that in one print, this is just one of those squares that had one edge that wasn't up to my standard, so to say. So I reprinted those pieces, and it was about 150 grams extra. But that's something I'll take with me for the next time I make a similar design, because I think it was on 2 pieces the most sloped edges or sides in the whole project. So I have to keep that in mind for the next one. Because there's no infill, you can't have too much overhang. Now I didn't do this for these 2 pieces, but if you want to try this yourself and you have issues, you could add infill. Just I kept it out and I didn't do it, and the reprint was fine. But if you're having trouble with edges or sides, you might want to add infill. Just keep in mind that your overall weight will go up, probably exponentially. Or maybe only do it for challenging parts that fail time over time. Because I am thinking about making this project available for everyone. Now, it's important if you start printing to get some sort of a system going, because you will end up with 35 pieces and they can all be turned about 90 degrees and they look similar to other pieces with the same slope, and they might even fit on a different place. So I made sure I very diligently noted on the right orientation, so to say. When I removed a piece from the build plate, that I noted a number 1 to 35 in the right orientation on the backside of the piece, so that if everything was upside down, you could read it from left to right, and all the numbers should be in the same orientation. So that's something to keep in mind and to be diligent about, because if you mess it up and you don't know where a piece goes, you could look back at how you printed it, but also on the print that when putting 2 pieces on there together, I sometimes had to flip a piece 180 to make it fit with the overhangs. So it's not as straightforward as this is piece 1, this is piece 2, based on the print bed that you printed at that moment. So you really have to keep that in mind. And then before doing anything else, even before ordering the backplate on which everything will be mounted, I just laid everything out on the table to see if everything looks fine, if everything goes together, if you see imperfections, because now is still the moment you can do reprints and fine-tune and modify things if you want to. And it also gives a amazing overall look of the whole design for the first time. And yeah, the first look was even better than in the 3D software, because it's tangible, you see different light shining through it, all the textures. Yeah, really happy with the result so far. And it was also amazing to see your vision come to life, see the light go through it. And this is something you can only achieve with 3D printing, with the different textures and the depth in the piece. And then it's time to measure the final dimensions of how everything printed came out. I ended up ordering the back piece on which I will mount everything. Ordering the same size as I had in Blender, so that's 60 by 84 centimeters. This is a couple of millimeters bigger than the print came out. I think that's due to shrinkage of the pieces. But that's the size that I went with, thinking that because I have a grid of 35 pieces, that those couple of millimeters play I could knead and yeah, make them disappear in between the pieces themselves. And then the backplate that I ordered is an aluminium panel that's coated on two sides. And this is one thing that in the end, looking at the end result, it's not really noticeable, but between some of the printed pieces, you can see in the end there's a fine white line where the pieces meet up, and there's that 0.5 millimeter of play. So in the future, I think I will go with something that's more in line with the color of the print, or something that's black, because if you look between the pieces, the shadow, you won't notice black, but because it's a white backplate now, you can see lines sometimes under the certain light if you're really looking for it. But because all the pieces also have some sort of overhang to each other, it's barely noticeable, but that's something for me, just quality wise, I will keep in mind for the next time. Now for the backplate, there's a couple of reasons that I went with the aluminium panel, because there are plenty of options out there. But the aluminium panel gives me sturdiness, and because it's coated, there are several easy to manage adhesives that work with it. And it's fairly lightweight, and it has a very thin profile, in opposed to, for example, wood or acrylic, and I really prefer aluminium or this stuff. But yeah, that's the main reason why I went with this option, because there's, as mentioned, there's plenty out there, and it's also fairly affordable around here. And it also, for example, in opposed to wood, it doesn't shrink and it doesn't bow. So yeah. And then having our backplate, we also have to think about how do I want to mount everything. I thought about this a lot, and this might be complete overkill, because thinking about what we are going to put on what. This is an aluminium panel. It's about 1 kilo something, and then we have the 3D printed parts, which totals in about 2.5 kilos. So it's not that much, but I also don't want it to come off. So I decided to rough sand everything and clean it with isopropyl alcohol. And then for the sanding itself, I generally do it in 2 directions. So first you do it from one to one side, and then you do it in the opposite direction, so you get a cross pattern for the best adhesion. And I started with the backplate, just with a scuffing pad or rough sandpaper, and then wiping it down. And yeah, this was a tedious, messy job, which I don't know if it's worth it, but you'll only know when it's too late, so I would just do it. If you want to recreate this, you can't go wrong with it. And after, of course, if you're done with the backplate, you can start sanding all of the 3D printed pieces. And I did the same here, cross pattern on both, because I limited the bottom layers. Just you don't press too hard on it, but you feel the bottom bowing. So it's not an issue, and I use a permanent marker to write all the numbers on it. They stayed on fine, there's no issues. And in this case, I sanded everything first and then did the IPA wipe down. It's just process-wise, this was the most straightforward, so to say. And yeah, just work in batches. And of course, before we start gluing everything up, it's very important to create a mounting hole in the aluminium plate as one of the sections. I don't know how to call it, pieces. So I checked for the middle row and then took the second row of 3D printed pieces and picked the top part of that grid, so to say, of those 9 pieces. So it's printed piece number 8 and then the most center top piece of those 9 in the smaller pieces. As you can see in the video at this point, I just marked it down on the aluminium plate first, and I did the same on the back side of that particular piece. And I used a general drill bit to drill both of them out. Now, however tempted you might be, don't start drilling just yet. Just make sure you flip the piece over and that the edge where you're drilling in is off of the table. And then I had a certain size of screw that I wanted to use, which I knew would carry the weight of the whole piece, with a plug of course for the wall. But I had to make sure at this point that it fitted through the piece so that we can mount it properly and that it will hang nicely. So I didn't have a large enough drill bit, so I had to force it a little bit to the larger side, but I've done this before, it's no issue. As long as the screw head in the end just hooks into the piece, that should be enough. I did have a little bit of an issue with the 3D printed part, because when drilling into it you have to be careful not to put too much pressure, because the plastic has been heated and has become very sturdy but fragile, so it breaks. When the drill catches it, it will just sort of shatter, and you have to not push too hard because you don't want to drill through the piece. And I use a small plier to just clean it up and make the hole in the 3D printed piece large enough so that the screw won't hit it. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now we can finally get to the next step, which is the glue up phase. And I went with a high-tech caulking, and this is just construction adhesive. It should be more than strong enough to keep this up, and I checked beforehand that it was usable for plastic as well as painted surfaces and aluminium. The aluminium is coated, so it's not the rough resource, so to say. But I did another IPA wipe down of all the surfaces, the aluminium panel as well as the individual pieces. And I was trying to figure out in what order that I had to glue everything down. So at this point I decided to start with the very top edge, and I could align this one nice and straight along to the edge of the aluminium. Yeah, you know what I mean. But I chose to start on that side because you have to start somewhere, and yeah. This is also the most critical for the mounting point and the hole that you made in the 3D printed part. So this has to be the most accurate of all pieces. And then of course there's the next dilemma of which pattern are you going to use and how much caulking are you going to use and what would be the best adhesion. Because with the caulking and because we have two flat surfaces that are going to touch each other, you don't really want air trapped underneath it. That could make the surface not straight. The 3D printed parts are a bit flexible, so I went with sort of a zigzag pattern to get it spread nice and evenly in between the layers and pieces if you squish it together. As you can see, I'm putting some pressure on it and just sliding it up and down to make sure that the caulking is spread nice and evenly underneath the pieces. And it's also useful to keep just a towel on hand and something to wipe something down if you might get some caulking on the side of your 3D printed pieces, or if you have to take something off and clean it real quick. And again, between moving every batch of 3D printed parts, I do a IPA wipe down every new row that I take. And after having the top two rows down, I started thinking about how do I want to do the rest. So I decided to line up the edges first, because those are the most visible from the outside of the whole project. So if you're walking towards it. And this gave me a nice little problem in the end, but we'll get there very soon. And yeah, just repeat every step, just move everything and put it in place. And now this is where it gets tricky, because you have parts overhanging upwards, and this is something that was a bit of an oversight for me. I think I should have started in the center here, but I really wanted that final part in the final shot. And then I found out I couldn't get it in the center anymore without pulling some other pieces loose again. And this was a bit tedious and quite a nerve-wracking process, because you have to lift things up, you hear things cracking, squeaking, and you hope you don't snap any of the 3D printed parts. But I got it done in the end. And then I just did a final push on every single individual piece, and yeah, just really pushing everything down one last time. And then there's the first look of the final product. So it's really looking amazing with all these colors, and especially with the light on it now. This is looking completely different from the first time we put everything together on the table, because now we have a studio light on it and no sunlight from the window, and it's looking completely different. And for the final part, we have to do a little prep on the wall, move some old nails were in there, I think. And then placing the plug. We're in Europe here in the Netherlands, so we have nice stone walls, very sturdy, but not the most easy to work with when placing new things in or on the wall. And now, after all that time, there's only one thing left to do, and that's mounting the piece on the wall in its final place. Now, because it's quite a tight fit, I just sped this up a little bit, but it went fairly easy, about 20-30 seconds to get it hanging properly. And that's it. That's my very first designed and 3D printed wall art in its final position. And I'm really happy with how it came out. I love the color and how the light plays on it. And yeah, the motion that you see from every different angle and it's something really unique people look at if they enter the hallway. And yeah, if you're still here, thank you very much for watching. Definitely let me know in the comments what you think about this project and video. Like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to be notified about more future content. I have some other 3D printed wall art, lighting and possible other projects in mind. They just take a lot of time and effort to create and record. This one took a couple of weeks, so I do plan to share this design on Makerworld from BambuLab. I have a profile there where I share some of my 3D print models, so I'll link it in the description if it gets posted. Once again, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.